So I'm sure many of you are aware that Spy is a fairly weak class, almost useless. Well, maybe not so much in pubs, I think. Anyways, the point of this video is to point out specific things wrong with Spy and how we can make him not so weak. If you guys disagree with some of these, let me know down below. Let's get started. So ever since the Ambassador has been nerfed, Spy's playstyle now only has one option, and it's very one-dimensional. Stock is now mostly every Spy's go-to gun, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing, it's just Spy's now only have a limited amount of choices to choose from, and not a lot of them are good. It also doesn't help that the revolvers also have bullet spread to make things worse. Spy's only alternatives to dealing damage when caught or in a fight is a high damaging revolver that could help the player get out of a bad situation if they're able to hit all of their shots, but is crippled by random bullet spread. Once again, Spy is a one-dimensional class. It doesn't have any subclass alternatives to playing Spy differently. This was the Ambassador's role, and I guess it still kind of is, but not too much. Besides that, the only other option Spy really has is the Diamondback, which for some reason wasn't nerfed alongside with the Ambassador, and the Enforcer, which is hardly that useful. You're basically stuck just using one of two other guns, which are the Revolver and the L'Étranger, and that really isn't much if you're trying to play Spy differently. As I've stated previously, the only other gun for Spy is the L'Étranger, which is pretty useful for timing stabs or thinking about your actions first. I even use this more often than Stock because my aim isn't very reliable. If there were more options like the L'Étranger, Spy can definitely be played differently from the usual knife Spy. In the competitive scene, Spy is so easy to predict and read because most of all Spies in competitive are most likely using their knife to get picks because they have no alternative to change it up a bit. But making it so weak to the point where if the enemy just slightly turns causes the Spy to miss a pick they were going for, makes Spy so extremely laughable and encourages most players to just play Sniper, which is by a long shot, no pun intended, the better pick class. You can just stay in the back lines with your teammates and get picks with no risks whatsoever. Now normally everyone's go-to knife is the default knife. Other knives have their upsides as well, but the most reliable one is Stock. This isn't a bad thing, it's more of just I'd rather not get pranked by the other knives' downsides that would cost me a key pick. Example, when was the last time you saw somebody use the Spicicle? Like seriously, nobody ever uses that knife anymore because it just seems pointless, no pun intended. Why get caught by a pyro and have your knife melt and still get killed by the pyro when you could just attempt to trick stab said pyro? Many of these knives have a pretty whack downside that just makes Spy's job harder. Another example, your eternal reward. Nobody wants to use this knife because it literally drains your cloak bar in like -4 seconds and costs a full cloak bar just to change your disguise. It's actually unnecessary. Stock is just so good at doing what it was meant to do, being able to backstab with no downsides with it. Again, Spy doesn't have any subclass alternatives with his knives. I mean, of course there isn't. The main point of Spy is to backstab, right? Just imagine swapping out Spy's main source of killing for something that could make him be played differently. Here's an idea I had in mind. A weapon that replaces Spy's knife with throwing knives. Instead of being close and personal, oh hello there! Now you're a medium range class that can do decent damage. I'm not going to go into detail yet with this concept, but just imagine Spy being played differently if he had more options other than just cloak, disguise, backstab. Now I'm pretty sure a lot of you might disagree with this idea, but just remember this is just an idea I barely just came up with. If you have any suggestions of your own, let me know down below. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts and ideas. Back to the main point of the section, almost all of the knives Spy has aren't reliable whatsoever. Sure, you can get like 220 health as Spy, but what good is that going to do if you're found almost a second later? It made you sponge more damage but took you longer to die. The first stab with the kunai is always the hardest, and you could repeatedly mess up over and over again until you get the first stab off, but it's not always guaranteed to let you live after that. Same thing goes with the big earner. You get a backstab and now you're fast. So what? You could cloak away, but literally anything can one-shot you because you're exactly at 100 health. 100 health in a game like Team Fortress 2 is asking to die to just about anything. Spy is already weak enough as is, and becoming fast for a few seconds isn't really rewarding. Sure, you can go for those cool chain stabs after the first stab because nobody expects Spy's speed to almost double instantly. In short, Big Earner isn't such a good knife unless you really want to get good with it, and even then it's really not that worth it. Another knife that used to be very popular was the Spicicle. Remember when everyone and their mom was running this knife? Nobody uses it now because it serves no purpose. You get caught by a pyro and your knife is gone. Now's your chance to run away. You've got a single second of being fireproof. It's honestly nothing when you're attempting to run away from a class that could just hold down M1 and find you in exactly 1 second. A 10-second afterburn immunity is okay, but pyros can easily track you down by just holding down M1 again. It's just a slow and painful death if you're running the Spicicle. You'll rarely ever escape with this knife. The only watches you'll ever see the Spy use is the Invis watch and maybe rarely the Dead Ringer. You'll never see anybody use the Cloak and Dagger because they're always invisible. The point of the Dead Ringer was to be aggressive and not have to play so passively. Now it's just the complete opposite of that. It forces the spy to play passively until they get their Dead Ringer back, which by the way, you should never run without the L'étranger or the Big Earner. The original Dead Ringer was actually perfect, but to make it so the spy isn't so bulky, you could make it so there isn't a damage reduction. The only reliable watch spy has at his disposal is the stock watch. The spy really is in need of different ways to be played or alternatives. Currently there are only 3 watches the spy has to use and work with. This really isn't very many considering spy is supposed to be this giant gimmick class. Spy is so easy to predict when it comes to whether or not he's using the Dead Ringer or the Invis watch. Nobody falls for spy's tricks anymore. You can easily track them while they're invisible, and they're usually not that hard to find. And also, most of the time runs out of cloak more times than I can count. Now that the Jungle Inferno update has been out for a while, spy's other watches are extremely laughable and serve little to no purpose. Dead Ringer spies are easily caught off guard if they don't have their charge back. Cloak and Dagger spies continue to sit in corners and do nothing, and well, that's about it. The only option you have is the only one that doesn't have any downsides: stock. Spy has become so one-dimensional, it's actually surprising people still want to play this class. He's weak, frail, and pointless with the lack of options he has now. I even question why I still play him even after all the nerfs and weapons that have become useless. At this point, I'd rather just play Sniper to have a more enjoyable time. Okay, seriously, Spy's sappers could be expanded on so much. The only viable and only useful sapper Spy has is the stock sapper. There's no point running the red tape recorder unless you're trying to fuck around with the NG on the other team. Valve could potentially buff the red tape so that it isn't just straight up garbage. They could make it so after it's unsapped, it's disabled for like 5 seconds or something. Let me know down below what you guys would do to fix the red tape recorder. There's actually no alternatives to using different sappers. You're basically just stuck using the stock and that's actually it. A potential buff for Spy would literally just to add more sappers so that Spy has more alternatives and could help his team out more. Right now, the sapper as it is only used to distract the NG for a short while, and that's just about it. Once you sap something, everyone is going to target you and kill you within seconds. The sapper is really only a thing to be used to coordinate a push with your team, and even then, nobody coordinates in pubs. Nobody. There's no way to take a nest down by yourself as a spy, which is funny because here I thought Spy was supposed to counter engineer, but I guess not. That's how weak Spy is. Wow. The sappers are actually not that useful when it's just you fighting an engineer. Pyros can easily just remove them with the homewrecker in one swing, multiple engineers can remove them in a few seconds, and your hard work is instantly just gone once you're dead or the sapper is removed. Sappers are merely a distraction so that your team could destroy the sentries themselves. Hell, even demos are way better sentry destroyers than Spy will ever be. It's not like Spy could just throw 4 sappers at a sentry and instantly destroy it. Demos on the other hand can literally destroy Nest, the NG, and anyone in that proximity with just 2 buttons. In competitive, Spy's job is to sap the sentry so your team can destroy it. All you're doing is disabling it so they won't be shot at while attempting to destroy the sentry. The Cow Mangler does the same thing and it takes less risk to do. I've shown this in plenty of my RGL videos, and to be honest, it's super annoying. If I were to play these clips in normal speed, nobody would see the backstab animation happen and just say, you just missed, lol. But once I slow down these clips, everyone sees the animation happening. Why does this happen? I still have no idea. Sometimes I'll literally click on the enemy's back and it'll count as a poke and end up getting me killed. Spy's backstab mechanic is so unreliable sometimes, it's hilarious. One minute you get a stab from 30 feet away, the next minute the backstab won't register when you're literally breathing down their necks. Backstabs that count as pokes happen so many times it's actually really fucking stupid. I don't know why it happens or how it happens, but it just does. We click the backs and it counts as a poke, alerting the enemy to turn around and mowing you down in less than 3 seconds. The point of Spy is to get insta-kill backstab so they can't fight back by just turning around. If the hitboxes for a class revolved around this mechanic aren't even working as intended, then why even play the class at all when there's a chance your backstab isn't going to register? Sniper's a way better option for being a pick class anyways. Low risk, high reward. Now on the other hand, some backstabs count as face stabs. Maybe face stabs are just random crits. Is this where all my poke backstabs are going? Seriously, sometimes I get a backstab and I can't even tell what just happened. Now when I say face stab, I don't mean people just randomly saying face stab when you clearly did a trick stab on them and they accused it of something stupid. I mean like actual face stabs, like you click their face and it happens to turn into a backstab. The reason these things happen, I think, is due to either high ping or just interp. I'm not sure why Valve decided that changing your interp to a higher number was a good idea. It's just glitchy and stupid exploits that cause spies to get insane backstabs that make no sense. There are multiple instances of disguising as a class with a broken model, and it's so glitchy. It ranges from demo men with no feet to pyro with no heads. And the worst part is, the spy themselves have no idea the glitch is even happening. So when they randomly die to people shooting at them for no reason, they get confused and just shrug it off. I still have no clue why this glitch happens. I'd assume that the pyros having their head gone is due to the enemy pyro wearing a cosmetic that replaces the head, but even then, why does this glitch when the spy disguises as them? As for the demo feet glitch, I think this is also a cosmetic related glitch. Why do these things happen if the enemy themselves don't glitch out like this? There's also a bug with the disguise as spy and engineer. For engineer, if the enemy doesn't have an NG, the disguise will hold out spy's revolver or knife, and it'll easily give away that you're a spy. Another thing for disguising as NG, it'll instead show the glove of NG instead of the gunslinger. I don't know if this was intentional or not, but this also gives away your disguise and easily gets you caught. The next thing is disguising as spy. It rarely occurs, but when it does, the spy is easily spotted even while invisible. I'm not exactly sure on how this happens, but what happens is if you have a spicicle equipped and the other spy doesn't, I think that's how it works, I'm not too sure. You'll have the frost effect on your spicicle, and if you go invisible, people can easily see you and kill you. Again, I've never had this happen to me because I don't use the spicicle, but if you know how it works, let me know down below. Search and disguises also glitch out when it comes to weapons. This ranges from demo holding flamethrowers to engineers holding revolvers. No clue what causes this other than maybe the other team doesn't have these classes, but even then, why does this occur? This kind of glitch is easily spottable and gets the spy killed within seconds because it's too painfully obvious. This mostly happens with the engineer, however, due to the fact that I'm guessing that the enemy has no engineer on their team, therefore causing the glitch to happen. Now, this glitch hardly occurs, but when it does, this just makes the spy themselves completely useless. Again, no clue how this happens, but I've seen it a few times. But in short, what happens is the spy has the bullet resistance above their head even when they're cloaked. And even after they die, it stays there. This is honestly a huge bug that can turn any spy useless and should be looked into. There's also no way to know when this glitch happens to you unless somebody on the other team says something, but other than that, you'll just keep getting killed by everyone while invisible or disguised and just assume that the enemies have aimbot. Alright, so this next one has been in the game for so long, it's pretty annoying when you accidentally do it too. This one occurs when you disguise and then cloak, causing the smoke effect to follow you while invisible, giving the enemy some more time to spot where you're trying to go. You could easily prevent this by just cloaking and then disguising, but sometimes you forget and do it on accident and it literally gets you killed. There's no exact way to know whether you did this glitch or not, but it's super obvious if you do. But basically, to prevent this from happening, just cloak and then disguise. This is a script that usually cheaters use, but essentially what it does is if you try to backstab the enemy using the script, they won't be backstabbed, but instead it would just count as a poke. I've ran into many players that have this and it's pretty annoying, but for some odd reason, they don't have any aimbot either most of the time. They just only have the script. I don't know how it works or what the point of it is besides just countering spies, but it's pretty weird when I run into somebody using it. I just thought I should bring this point up because I've seen it quite a few times and all it does is just make me swap to a different class as it renders spies useless. The script is actually undetectable and it's pretty sad as it's also sometimes used in competitive. I ran into a few people who have used this script in my scrims and sometimes matches, and all I could do is sit there and laugh because they're so bad at spy checking or just turning around and afraid of dying to spies that they need the script that increases the volume of the cloak sound to however loud they want to help find the spy easier. It's been a while since I've seen this or heard people using this, but it's still a thing people are allowed to do. There's no punishment in UGC or RGL for using the script, as I've stated before. Undetectable and no way to prove the enemy is using it. It's also, I'm assuming, fairly easy to install and put into your TF2 as it's just a script. I don't see why you're able to adjust the volume for something like this, but yeah, if you do this kind of thing, you're pretty scummy. I hope you guys enjoyed and understand all the problems Spy currently has. But even then, does anyone really care? Nobody actually cares about spies. Everybody just thinks we're salty and want a big boy buff to make us feel better. If Valve were to remove Spy from TF2, nobody would care. That's how pointless and weak Spy is as a class. But together, if we show our love and support for Spy, maybe then Valve will do something to make the Spy not so terrible. Anyways, I'll see you all next time. Bye.